Okay, it's finally content time. Long ago, I made content of Origin tiers, and I also made some content of a hero tier list, but I wasn't very happy with it. It was like super rambly. And I just never posted it, and I don't know what I did with it. So I'm remaking it now with the new heroes. But instead of completely restarting, I'm just going to do my best to explain the old picks, maybe swap a couple of them around, and then they've added since that last time, they've added 6 new heroes. I apologize, their headshots are much worse because I got these old pictures from a Google sheet the dev made, um, and I didn't have one for the new heroes, so kind of ugly, but what can you do? Yeah. Part of the reason I'm not totally redoing this, apart from time and effort, is I stopped playing this game for a really long time. I got a little burnt out. I also joined the Discord, which was a mistake. It was like fine at first, but then like you inevitably get some guy that has like a 98% win rate. Which I don't know. Personally, affected the way I viewed the game negatively, I guess. Um, but I'm back now. I've been playing a bit. I've been enjoying it a lot. I think the new changes are fun. Um, I think the new heroes are mostly pretty fun too. And so yeah, I have a list on the right here. This is my pick percentage for heroes. It is not updated. Also, because I'm on Windows 11 now, and my hotbar has to be at the bottom, the dimensions of the sheet are they're like 90%. Yeah, that hopefully fixes it. Um, so on the right is the pick rate. I didn't bother updating it with the new heroes because first of all they're all at the bottom, but it also actually trails off the screen now when I try and take a screenshot. So I'm not even sure how I'd get the full list anymore. But this was the list, I guess, kind of before I stopped playing, and it shouldn't have changed much. I haven't played a ton of games since I started playing again. Um, but I kind of had it there just to keep me in line, since the idea of these tier lists, like the idea of the Origin tier list, it wasn't strictly what I think are the best heroes, it's just kind of the ones I like. So heroes that are generally pretty good, but also kind of fit the way I like to play, or I don't know, some of my, for the heroes in particular, I just like the way some of them look, I guess. Um, and so yeah, I guess to start with, I'll just go through the existing tiers, maybe move some stuff around. Um, there's definitely a couple things I'm saying that I don't entirely know why I did it the way I did. So yeah, we'll start with S plus. I think this one is fairly true still. I should grab some water before doing this. Oh gosh, also the names. When I did this last, I probably knew most of the names off the top of my head, and now I definitely do not. I do have the game open in the background though. I even have hotkeys to change the Streamlabs. Let me check here. Oh. Oh no, there we go. It's working. Okay. Hey, so I can only switch if needed. So this first one is Ira, third most played hero. What can I say? Like her a lot. She does a big stun with her spell. She has some built-in attack speed. Applies some frost. I don't know. Just feels like a very easy hero to slip into a lineup. Very good for applying debuffs, I think, because of the bonus attack speed. Then also offers additional utility with a stun. But you can also, they're ranged. I don't know what do you even call them in this game. They're one of the ranged bow users, I guess. So they can also switch into DPS pretty easy if needed, if it works out that way. The way I tend to play the game is I kind of just take the first 5 heroes that are offered to me, or I do select from the heroes that are offered, but I don't swap out the heroes later in the game very often. I try and just use the first 5. Um, so having heroes that can be a little bit versatile is nice, and I think she's really good for the utility DPS swap. The second one is what's her name? Was it J one? I'm not gonna look up all the names. I can't run out of time. But I'm gonna look up this name since I've already started. Is it the one that started with J? Yeah, Joanna. Okay, this is my most pick hero. Cool. As spellcasters go, it's just pretty solid. She applies Frost, which is obviously the spellcaster debuff of choice. I don't know. Her stats are okay. She gets like a little bit of extra spell power from summon. I really don't like summons in general. I don't like going the summon path. Um, but you know, the fact she gets a little extra spell power if you happen to have some summons is nice, I guess. I don't hate that. Alright, we have the funny blood guy. This guy's not super high on my useless, I think, because I was just kind of getting into him when I made this tier list. Um, just a very straightforward, doesn't utilize spell power at all. It's just pure physical damage, little bit of built-in lifesteal, also built-in buffing for percent physical damage increase, which is really handy. Um, he's just like nice early game damage. I don't know if he ever scales incredibly. He's definitely been my highest DPS in completed runs, but I feel like he's one of those ones you can pick up early, feel good about. I think I focused on that a lot when I made this because I'm seeing a couple that are high up. I'm not sure should be that high up, but they are like kind of nice for early damage, and I was focusing on that a lot when I made this list originally. The second one is the only tank in this list. Or on this column row. No, sorry, not column. The only tank on this row, the only S plus tank, according to me, is the dragon guy. And I think this decision was partially just Atrios, that's the name. He is my most used tank, I think, so I guess that makes sense. I think he is also just fun. The tanks in general are kind of boring, I guess. You give them some health stats, and then you slap on some like healing or healing buff or shield buff or whatever it is they need. Um, I think I found Atrios a little more interesting because he's a caster tank, and he has built-in mana regen with his default passive, so he just casts a shit ton. So you can kind of, I have at least had a couple runs where, at least early game, I kind of had him as a damage dealer, which was fun. There's quite a few items I think that allow you to turn defense specifically into damage, ethereal damage, which can be fun to use. Then on top of that, he obviously applies flame, which boosts ethereal damage. That's kind of a nice little combo if you get the right items. And also, I do like the flame comps. It's weird. I don't use a lot of the ethereal damage users, I feel like the pure Eth damage dealers, but I do enjoy lots of fire. Um, in part because this next guy, who I want to say his name is Pyro, but I don't think that's correct. No, I think it is Pyro actually. Let's switch over. Let me see if I can do the buttons right. Yeah. Oh yeah, there he is, Pyro. Perfect. Wow, I'm so good at this. Oh, and I've accidentally typed in my hockey. Wonderful. Yeah, so Pyro is a spellcaster that gains a shit ton of damage based on the flame on the enemy. His default passive is very nice, just casts more spells, and the more spells he casts, the more spell power he gets, assuming you're applying a decent amount of burn. Um, it's got like a decent base damage, 240. Uh, what's his mana cost again? 7? It's average, I think. Yeah, no, he just feels like a very easy hero to scale up spell damage on. You don't really need to build spell damage on him. That's kind of like the annoying thing, I guess, with some of the spellcasters, is you're trying to ramp up their mana regen, so they'll actually cast their spells, but then you also need the spell power for the spell to do anything. And with him, it's just like ramp up the mana regen, he'll get spell power by casting. He also gets extra casts with his passive. It's just very foolproof as long as you have someone applying burns. Next, speaking of applying debuffs, we got the mushroom guy, the blue mushroom guy. Just a very reliable debuff applier that, can potentially also deal a ton of ethereal damage if ends up going that way. Ringy, I think it's Ringy. Mushroom guys are cute, so that's a big plus. And I don't know, it's kind of the same as, I guess, Ira. It's just a very good utility backline right clicker that can also become damage if needed. Blake, I think, is the name of this fiery gerbil guy. I'll be honest, I mostly like him because he's a gerbil that with fire. Um, I think it's fun. But I do like his passive is kind of handy. Get some built-in lifesteal. Didn't used to be that way. I think you used to work up to the lifesteal, but a little bit of built-in lifesteal, so you have to worry about that. His spell scales with everything: attack speed, attack damage, and spell damage. I think it scales with spell damage really badly, but it does just scale. I don't know. He's not the best, but he's easy to fit in, and the model is cute. So next up is the fairy dragon, Puck. I don't think the name's actually Puck. I'm not gonna look it up. They It's a nice combo with if you have a lot of melees because they drop a nuke that also heals. It's just kind of handy. And they also have is it every crit they increase your team's attack speed. It's really nice for a spellcaster in a mostly right-click lineup because they do really well with crit chance and attack speed. They can also make use of a couple specific items that are like crit for non-critters. There's one like every time you crit, you increase your spell amp instead of dealing extra damage. Always try and get that one. Um, yeah, no, I do a lot of the. I think a lot of the just bunch of melee right clickers arguably the most effective way to play the game. I briefly mentioned like the 98% win rate guy in the Discord. He just went hard in that. Like his top picked heroes were all like 10 to 15%. They were all like melee brawlers like Nox and the Ice guy that got nerfed repeatedly. Um, so I imagine that's effective, and I do enjoy getting a bunch of melee fellows every now and then, and the dragon works pretty well with those. Um, On the S tier, there's a lot of tanks on the S tier because they're all the tanks I didn't want to put in S plus just purely on the basis that tanks are boring. The first one is the summoner tank that's basically lone druid. Um, she has some fun interactions. Like if you get shield on the hero, then they can actually survive even when the bear dies, which is kind of cool. It can be a way to avoid losing additional flame if you're roughing it out a bit. Yeah, no, just kind of handy. You can have like a little summon comp if you want. It works well. Like I said, I don't like going into summons much because I feel like you kind of mostly get pushed into either going no summon or full summon. This is one of the few heroes that I think does a decent job of like semi-summon. Like you can just build it like a normal hero, but it will benefit from some of the summoner items if you happen to get one. Um, Same with this next guy, the tank that spawns water elementals and he heals himself by sapping their HP. Um, he's a solid tank. He uses crit as well. Crit's really good, I think, in this game. And so I do lean towards getting a lot of crit going. Like I said, I think the Discord sweats did a similar thing. Um, and so having crit-based tank is kind of nice. So if you give crit to your whole team, he benefits from it. He also just feels good. I don't know if I mean they've done a few balance patches, so I can't imagine he's got like broken stats or anything. But switch over to our game. Is the right button? No. Yes, I did. Where is he? Take a quick look at him. Ooh, he is. It's like decent. He has very high crit chance and decent attack speed to go with his sort of strange combo here. Um, yeah, no, I guess his stats aren't that crazy or anything. He just feels good. I feel like he feels like a very effective tank, even with minimal tank items, which is always handy. So, double check screen. All right. So I came in once again. He can kind of benefit from some of the summoner's items. There's one item in particular that like increases your attack speed and also heals the summons every now and then. That one's really nice on him. Faster attack speed means more casts and more crits, and then the heals means that his water elementals last longer, which is handy. Alright, next up we have this guy. I'm going to look up his name real quick, because in the early days of the game, it was a bit controversial within the small community. Luco, that's his name. Very broken on release, has been nerfed repeatedly. Has built-in Omni Crit, which is handy. Gives the whole team a bunch of attack damage, which is handy. Be a pretty good damage dealer himself, or at least used to be. I used him yesterday in the last one I played. Um, I don't know, yeah, he's just good, I guess. The Thunder Tank Robot. It's a caster tank. I think I definitely prefer caster tanks generally. I think this guy could honestly, I could definitely move him to S plus tier with the benefit of hindsight. Maybe I'll do it. Is it easy to do? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, it's pretty easy. Here we go. I'm moving him. I like him a lot. It's just caster tank. Next up, we have the only true healer in the game, I think. What's her name? Is it Rose? I think this one's Rose. I used her a lot when I first started. It's like, there's some heroes that have like healing that, especially when you're new, just feels weird to use. There's like James heals, but he needs to do a bunch of damage to heal. There's the guy directly below this, the weird swamp monster who heals, but it's like one hero at a time. It's kind of weird. Rose is just a very straightforward heal a bunch of people at once with a big spell. I definitely use her less now, because I don't feel like there's a lot of other ways you can get healing. Even just like a relic that gives the whole team lifesteal, or the like level 3 stat buffs. But she's still kind of nice, especially if you already feel good on the damage front. It's like, okay, let's go healing. Next up, the first Surge specific hero on this list is the tank one. I don't know, it's another like caster tank. It's kind of, she is very boring relative to most heroes. It's like her passive is just health and defense from surging. Her active just makes her like make a fake surge. There are some fun things you can do. I remember I had something weird with Omni. It's like Omni crit and the crit surge. I think you can actually crit the spell. You can't crit surge effects. I think you could crit the spell. And I made like an insane damage dealer, and it was like I was really excited, and then I accidentally lost the run by doing something stupid, and I could never replicate it. But she definitely has some funny interactions on top of just the generic surge tank. So I don't know, kind of cool. Kind of like a clean model too. The models can look very, I don't know, messy. I think on the screen sometimes. Um, it's clean. All right, the lightning bug. This is another one that I just really like. Like originally, I picked this guy. Is it Zots? Is this one Zots? It is Zots. Nice. I definitely originally picked him because he looks cool and has a funny name. But they've made some changes specifically to his passive, and I think they maybe made his cast time a little faster. And they gave him, I think, the stat buff on cast. I don't think he originally had that. They've done a lot of changes over time where actually, originally, I just liked the way he looked, but I found him a little hard to use. I think he's actually quite good now. He gets an insane amount of attack speed if you can buff up his stats, and they've added, I think, with the Halloween update, they added a lot of items and a relic, a couple of relics maybe, and a new passive that all benefit him. I think he actually looks pretty good now in terms of like a viable damage dealer. I used him the other day, and he just kind of slapped. So yeah, no, he's fun. He's funky looking, kind of cool. Just something realizing there's a hero on here or not on that I don't see. A hero that's on my mind, but I don't see on the list. Wondering, did I miss a hero? I'm thinking of. Crap, what's her name? Corinna. Is Corinna on this list? Just surprised she's not in the SS plus tier. She's like the highest DPS I've ever gotten in a run. It's just generally very solid. But I don't see her at all. Alright, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I see her here. She's definitely not on the actual tier list though, right? Okay, she can, we'll talk about her right now, I guess. She'll take the robot's place. Corinna's a damage dealer that gets more crit when you get shield. You can just build off of all the shield. Like early on, she's pretty weak because I think there's a lot of stuff you need to get for her to be. I mean, you could just get like generic damage items, and that'll work. But if you really want to play to her strengths, you kind of need a bunch of things to work together. Like she needs to be gaining shields, then she needs the health to get the shields big, and then I think you ideally want something that gives you damage based on shields to go along with your crit based on shields, and then ideally also some crit damage percentage. But then once you get all that going, she's just pretty insane. She's built in Omni Crit, and is it built in Omni Crit or is it just that? Yeah, it is. It's built in Omni Crit and an active that scales. It does the triple scaling with attack speed, attack damage, and spell power, and hits a bunch of enemies at once. And I feel like her damage just gets really insane really fast. Um, she can obviously use a lot of different items with built-in Omni Crit. Just kind of need a bunch of stuff to go correctly at the same time, which can be a little annoying, I think. I've definitely maybe borked a run or two trying to min-max, trying to make like the perfect Corona build and not getting the right items and not having damage. Um, what can you do? All right, where were we? Going to the right. The ice, I think, woman tank. Another caster tank requires you to put Frost down, and she gets a bunch of defense. She also gets some built-in defense from the passive, which is particularly nice early game. Yeah, no, it's a nice combo with like Joanna, who's my most picked hero apparently of all. Um, so a solid caster tank. What do you say? I like all the caster tanks. Okay, so this is the one I'm most surprised is I put this high. Is this guy? The hell's even his name? Shall we look real quick? His name is. Where is he? Ryu. Ryu is his name. Um, he's not great. He's one of these ones that I do think feels good early. He gets a lot of self sustain and a bit of attack buff. I think the slight issue with these types of heroes is that they do kind of fall off a bit. I mean, not necessarily with the type even. Like the melee brawler, melee DPS, like some of them scale decently. This is just one of the ones that doesn't scale great. And I don't think pivot's great to a debuff role either because he doesn't give himself attack speed. He doesn't make a ton of sense as a tank, so he does feel nice early. He definitely just falls off a cliff at some point. And so I'm very surprised I put him so high when I did this. This is like a hot take, I'm sure. Um, I am going to move him actually. The A-row is a bit cluttered, but yeah, I think A is. I was gonna. I honestly don't think he is B because I do like that early game quite a lot. I'm gonna leave this open because I'm sure I'm gonna move someone in at some point. I think this is reasonable. I think he's pretty comparable to the Goat Man as well. The Goat Man has the same problem. The Goat Man does a ton of damage with his spells, has some really nice stats, but just doesn't scale great. Like, you can get him kind of as an okay debuffer, but the randomness of it is weird. He's just hard to turn into something useful, but he is very good early mid game, I think. Let's just like move one of the A's up. I'm sure there's at least one of these. Like, I'm looking at the mushroom guy. I just love the mushroom guys, man. I did recently, I think part of why I like this mushroom guy more now is I think shortly after I originally made this, I found a really insane combo, which is the blood spear thing. The way it works with his active is just really funny. It's combo perfectly. So if you ever get that item on him, it's just a good time. Um, so I think that made me like him a lot more. But yeah, anyway, I know that's the red mushroom. It's a cute model. Um, and it's is one particular item that I think is really fun, but it's also decent in general. I think he can be an okay debuffer, not as good as Rigi. What's his name again? Say Ryu, best guy we just talked about. Rinji. Not quite as good as Rinji, but still okay. On the bleed. Subject. We have the caster that just applies a lot of bleeds and gets a bit of built-in spell vamp. I don't know. I remember using this one a lot. I liked bleed strats are pretty good too. I kind of do all of them. All the different debuff based strat. I guess I like the debuff based strategies in general. So anything that's just a good debuff applier is good. You definitely need to like build up some HP on this hero, I think. But she always feels pretty good. The fact that I think she also increases her spell damage by like using her HP. That's kind of nice. Any hero that has like additional avenues to multiply their damage is always decent damage options, I guess, which is nice. Alright, Weird Bugman. He's just like, I feel like my go-to for a low attack speed damage dealer. Um, this works out well. His passive's good for it. His, I think, active is good for it too, although I thought they maybe changed it from when I last played. I haven't used him yet on my return. I remember having a lot of good times with him. He does just require some specific items, but does work pretty well when you get him going. A lot of fun. Then the other electric tank. This guy was super broken, I think, originally, because his passive was just obscene. I think they nerfed it repeatedly, where he heals every time he gets a shield. So you just keep giving him shields, which obviously helps him tank, and then he heals off of it, which helps him tank. He's just a big tanky boy. Um, which is cool. And they also have that. They also, when they added the generic passives, you can also potentially get that passive that gives HP based on electricity. It's like a few electricity or shocks. Sorry, I keep saying electricity shocks. It's kind of a couple of heroes that use that well. He's one of them, um, which can get a bit obscene. So I like him, but he's almost a bit boring. I think I used him so much early, and he was like so obviously good, but only mostly because of the passive, which you could theoretically get on any tank. Like his active's pretty whatever. I like him a little less than the caster tanks, but he's still effective, so I put him in S. This is the punchy tank. I like this guy a lot, but I feel like he's hard to use. Lifesteal based tanking is a little hard, and I think the Lone Druid girl does it better. But he is still kind of cool. I like the design of like a knight robot thing. Um, the other potentially low attack speed damage dealer, the Yeti. What's his name? Did he had a funny name? I feel like he did. Ralph. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Ralph the Yeti. I feel like you didn't really want to go all in on negative attack speed with him, um, like you kind of could with the Bugman. So I think he's a little bit harder to use, but still kind of fun. I think the like low attack speed strats. You can also do like big mana, high max mana strats with him. I don't know. I don't know if strats is the right word, but tactics. I don't know. Builds. High max mana build. That's it. With him works pretty well. Cool guy. Next up, the old dude that stuns people with lightning, applies shock. He gets a little extra bonus out of mana regen too with his default passive that deals damage based on mana regen. I don't know, he's just kind of nice. Nice utility caster. Magmar, I think is this weird rock's name. I feel like objectively he's really not that great. Trying to build him as a damage dealer has been a colossal failure every time I've tried it. It just doesn't seem to work. But as a debuff applier, he seems to do okay. His spell applies 4 burn, which is quite a lot. I don't think any spell applies more than 4 of a debuff. And on top of that, he has good base attack speed and gets more attack speed from his passive. So I feel like he's an okay debuff applier. Significantly less cool and fun than Rinji, but I have used him as a debuff applier a fair amount of times, so there it is. Weird Swamp Monster. This hero was like very. I didn't like him at first. I remember when I first started playing because A, he's ugly, and B, his whole way of doing stuff, like his kit, is super weird. Um, but I got used to it, and I had some fun games with him. So overall, I like him. Next up, we have the guy with the blades. They actually changed this guy's spell recently, which I think is really nice. They made it so it scales with attack speed, so it doesn't like screw you over when he stops and casts it. And obviously combos with his default passive way better. Um, I used him in 2 runs recently, I think, mostly as sort of a tank slash debuff applier, utility guy with a bit of damage. And honestly, I like him a lot, especially now they've made that change. I don't think he's very good, or at least I struggle to get a lot out of him, but he feels relatively simple to use as long as you aren't expecting too much, and I don't know, just feels comfortable for me. We have the shield guy. I feel like he's really annoying to use. His cost is massive. You want to, I don't know. He feels difficult to use, but he also feels incredibly powerful once he gets going. It's kind of like A tier for strength, but uh, I put him high because he's strong, but also not too high because he's annoying to play. I feel like in what do you call him? Endless runs, he's probably insane, but I don't know. I find him a little annoying. The Fire Lady. Is it Naka? I don't remember. I got her confused with this one. But she is max mana scaling, which is kind of fun. And I remember doing a few builds that I liked. But overall, nah, just okay. Already talked about the goat a bit. Just good early game damage. The spell's 300 base spell damage, which is insane. So he scales his spell power really well. And he gets additional damage with burn. So like the scaling on his spell is insane. But I still feel like he's hard to make useful. Um, I think the fact he's a melee hero and his spell has a thin AoE makes it kind of hard to hit the things you want. It's a big part, kind of a big issue with him. I know I'll make it work one day. And then this one is this. What's her name? Emily. Okay, it is this one. It's the one. This was like really OP very briefly. F damage. Very fun. Does incident attacks. It's like they kind of added this guy now. It feels like just better. But anyway, ignoring the new guy for now. Yeah, she does F damage. I don't really love the F damage dealers that aren't burn related for some reason. She doesn't apply any debuffs by default, which makes my small brain upset. So she's like okay. Next up is the bleed applier. He's one of those. There's two heroes, him and like the troll ice woman. They apply their spells in an AoE around all allies, so he kind of needs melee allies to be useful, which is fine. I always have like two, at least usually 2 to 4 melees, I guess. I'm more willing to have 4 melees and 1 range than vice versa. But he has some max mana scaling too, which is kind of interesting. I do feel like he sort of demands a couple specific items, which is why he's a little low. And I do just prefer the other bleed mage, which is the like priestess looking woman right above him. But he's okay. Okay, then we talked about this guy, and this one is the Surge, sort of like damage dealer, I guess. Surge right clicker. She eth based. She's kind of weird. Let's switch over to our thingy. She is funky. You can get some crazy high burst with her. That's right. She has like a bunch of attack speed. It's like eth damage and attack damage. Oh, that's right. She's like built-in eth. So everything she does is eth. I don't know. She's definitely pretty cool, but I don't know. Not a lot to say about her. I didn't put her very high, I guess. I feel like I'm just describing what these heroes do at this point, which is a little lame. But I don't have a lot to say, I guess. Like I said the ones that I liked and why I liked them, and I'll say some mean things about the bottom ones, but these A and B ones are kind of just like they do what they do, and I don't know what to say. They're just not super interesting to me, but not bad. Actually, it's A over B because the burst damage can be kind of fun. Zappy guy gives mana regen, a little bit of shield. He's okay. I think he's does a bit of stun as well. Well, I was surprised to put him so low because I feel like I've used him a lot, but it's just another utility mage, I think, and I kind of prefer some of the other utility mages more. Next up is Nox. I don't know. I never liked him that much. I guess there was that one guy that really liked him, and apparently won almost all his games. But I don't know. Just never appealed that much. I preferred some of the other right clickers, I guess, like Shield guy and the guy with the big red hair. Next up, we have the Troll Lady. A melee spellcaster. I think is the one thing that kind of turns me off of this hero a little. She is very cool when you get going, though. The Omni crit, the fact you can hit multiple heroes repeatedly with the same spell if you have a bunch of melees. Kind of cool, but definitely takes a bit of work. We have the Summoner guy. If I ever do Summoner stuff, it's pretty much always with him, and usually in combination with his tank that I ranked quite highly because they work really well together. Kind of cool if I am doing Summoner stuff, but like I said, I don't really love Summoner stuff. Next up, we have the Stun, with like Morgana kind of looking person. What's her name actually? Not Morgana, is it? It's always what it is in my head. It looks like that famous video game character. I'm looking on the list, but I haven't bothered to Kasara. Actually, single target is a little bit limiting. I do actually like the stun a lot. I used her a couple times recently. And I used her in one of my favorite runs ever, where I just perma-stunned the hands with a shock-based lineup for like a minute as I very slowly killed them. Um, but yeah, no. The single target thing is definitely a bit limiting. Probably why I put her down here. Realistically, I think now I'd maybe put her a little higher. Maybe swap her with one of the ones that are like good but hard to use, like the shield guy. But I can't. I'm not strong enough opinion to actually change anything. Next up, we have Gnosis from League of Legends. Really fun when you get going, but he's such like a feast or famine tank. He's either like an infinite supply of tankiness and okay F damage, or he just falters and dies instantly. I do enjoy the builds that work with him, but I feel like he's also one of the biggest like causes of my losses. Like win rate wise, I think he's got to be one of the worst. So I feel like he's just such a feast or famine tank. And you don't want your tank to be feast or famine. They're like often the backbone, I feel like, of the lineups. Funny rock guy. He's very unique, which is cool, but it can be hard to sometimes find the items for him because he is so unique. Like he's kind of crit based, and do you want to work around? You kind of have to work around the spell, though. I think. I think the F damage from the crits with the defense is not effective enough. So he's kind of fun to work with, but he's not like a casual pickup for me. And I think generally I'm ranking high based on, this ranking I guess is how likely I am to pick the hero in some ways. I'm not very likely to pick him. Exact same thing can be said for the next one here. The lightning mage, I think lady technically, although they look very unearthly. Um, Very fun if you get them going. They have some very interesting like crazy scaling. Maybe I was wrong about the whole my highest DPS ever was Corinna or whatever. It may have actually been this hero. Oh no, it was this hero, but that was in one of the special challenges where you got like an extra origin, so that's kind of cheating. But no, this hero does get some potentially insane damage, but they require a lot of stuff to be going a certain way. I feel like it's very specialized, which is why they aren't ranked super high. Then there's the wolf, a very straightforward F damage dealer. Um, one thing I can say about the wolf and James, who's the person to the right, is that the heroes with timed buffs are very annoying because they'll stop and cast their buff even if the old one hasn't run out. So if you have them with their like attack speed slash max mana slash mana regen casting too often, they waste a bunch of time buffing themselves and they should be attacking. But if you don't do it often enough, they either they're buffing themselves too late in the fight for their first buff, or maybe the buff's even running out, which is really lame. So I find those annoying to work with, which is why all three of them are like B and C tier. They're just annoying. James is pretty cool when you get him going though. The wolf guy, I don't think I've used much at all. Maybe I did use him because I like the way he looked. He reminded me of another League of Legends character. But I think James is being the one I've thought has worked better when I've gone for it. Lastly, we have the Surge Mage. I actually do like this guy a lot when I'm doing Surge heavy lineups. The way his ult or active, whatever you want to call it, works does give you a ton of Surge, which is super nice. But he's kind of similar to the guy directly above him, the bleed guy. I feel like you kind of want some specific items for it to work. Trying to remember exactly. Let me just look. Exactly does he do? I want to say it's max mana. His is not really max mana based. It's just that over time it gets stronger. That's probably why I so often go for max mana on him. I mean, some very interesting stats. A very, very high attack speed with decent crit, which is interesting. So you can definitely do some interesting stuff with him, but I see he's not the most straightforward mage. I actually do rather like him for Surge lineups, though. I could very easily maybe swap him with someone from the tier above if I felt like it. But for now, just leaving it as is. The final tier. Okay, C is when I really getting into the meh tier. Um, I actually do want to move one of them up right away though, because they buffed this guy. So that the issue I had with what the hell is this guy's name even? Marco. I used to pick him quite a lot early, and then I realized it was just like it's very annoying because he applies bleed on crit, which seems like a perfect combo. Crit and bleed, tons of physical damage, but his crit rate is terrible, and the way to get it up is to put him away from other heroes, which like just doesn't work on some of the important fights. You just have to group them. And so I just found that very annoying. He just demanded so many stats, and then his active has a really long cast time, which is super annoying. Even though it does high damage, once you get into the late game and he's like full physical damage dealer, it's just like a lost DPS time. Um, so yeah, he's got a lot of faults. But that being said, they raised his crit damage, I think, in the very most recent Christmas update. So I think he's a bit more viable, or at least I like him a bit more now. So I'll up him to B tier. In the actual C tier, we have the guy that summons the wolves. I used him a bunch early, and then as I got better at the game, I guess, or I began understanding the game more, having more opinions on the game, I began to realize I couldn't actually get him to do anything well. Whoops. Um, I don't know. He's okay in summon. I think he's probably decent in summon columns because he summons that can actually attack, which is pretty big for the summon items and relics and origins and stuff. But just kind of underwhelming. The ice guy, I really wanted this guy to be good. I feel like he's a lot of ways to buff his damage. He gets extra spell power based on shield, and then he also does extra damage based on frost on the enemy, on top of like the already like innate extra damage spell damage you get from frost on the enemy. Um, the weird thing with this guy, I think, is actually the way his spell travels. It's like a slow moving spell that moves in a line. It's kind of a similar issue to the goat guy. Um, where I feel like when I've tried to use him, even when he gets crazy high spell power and his spell just does a ton of damage, it still ends up like taking so many casts to kill things. Because it'll like fly to the side and it'll hit one enemy, and then it'll hit the next cast will only hit one different enemy. Um, it's not like some of just the basic like circular nuke ones where it just hits everything. It feels like. So a bit of a weird, yeah. No, it just takes a ton of build up for a very underwhelming payoff. Ripley. This is like a hero that doesn't technically need summons, but feels like it should be built around summons. Has very weird stats, like super high defense but very low HP. He was Sari's favorite hero when she played the game, but I've never found a lot of use for him. Next up is another one of these timed buff heroes. So kind of the innate annoyingness of the timed buff, plus he just demands a lot. You need shock. You want shock to increase the damage that he gets from his buff, but the damage he gets from his buff is also based on spell power, but then his Eth damage. It just feels like he requests a lot of different things. Like, you can theoretically do a ton of physical damage, a ton of Eth damage, based on your spell power. And then I guess you also, whatever you're doing with the shock, like, he can in theory do a lot of cool things at once. And I've had a run or two where he totally owned, but I do generally find him a little annoying to use, and therefore I'm less likely to pick him up than some of these other damage dealers. Okay, this hero, once again, they're like right above another one that I have similar opinions on, which is interesting. But they do like an AoE spell where they heal, and they also get shields every now and then. This hero's just very weird. It feels like it should be a tank, but it doesn't have taunt. Like, every tank above this has a taunt that's like very key to tanking, I feel like. Like, you don't need a taunt to be a tank. There are just certain fights where if you don't have it, it feels bad. A big one being the Act 2 boss, the mummy one. Like, not having a taunt on that can totally ruin you sometimes. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I've tried to use this one a lot, and I think they maybe buffed her. They definitely buffed the one I have directly below her. Um, but I don't know. It could be useful. They're just very weird to. Their stats are decent too, from what I remember. They have like good attack speed and good base tankiness, but I don't know. Difficult to use. Last one is the weird assassin that like stuns and blinks away. Very fun and cool hero to use. Once again, very difficult to use. The whole blinking aspect makes them pretty questionable DPS because they'll spend a ton of time walking. There's like no way to increase movement speed in this game. Movement speed in this game is generally completely not a thing, but it's a thing for this hero, which makes her kind of weird. So kind of fun, but very janky, and I think hard to make scale well. In the D tier, these are the ones I really just don't like and almost never pick up. The guy that gives defense, the tree, I actually did use him this week, so I guess I'll use him sometimes. I don't know, he feels very difficult to use. The defense for your team's kind of nice, but like I don't know, it doesn't like replace healing. I've seen some crazy, particularly endless strats that utilize the whole defense death damage thing I talked about right at the beginning. Um, and him to get like crazy numbers, but I don't like playing endless. That's pretty relevant. Yeah, I don't know. He's just a kind of a pain to use. I feel like the buff he gives isn't that significant. Next one is like Scarvos or something. Savos. He's like super duper summon based. He's like the summon guy, and I just don't like him. I find him really annoying to use. You definitely have to build around summons with him, I think. In theory, he's like a super powerful support because he can just give you straight attack damage or straight spell power, which is super useful. And I think on objective level, he is, or at least was, very good, but I just find him very irritating to use. He's another one of these heroes that excels in the ultralight endless stuff. Like a lot of the ultralight endless uh, comps and screenshots that I saw get posted in Discord had both of these heroes in them. But I think for the more just Ascension gameplay that I like, I don't know. They're just not that good. They're not that fun to play. Next up is the other aura guy, but his aura gives crit chance, which just isn't useful. Like scaling it beyond its scaling it beyond 100 is pointless. Scaling it beyond even 90 is probably pointless. You just don't once you're at 100% crit chance. Like, what are you gonna do with him? He earns you some extra gold, which is kind of interesting, but all in all, I find him to be a very pointless hero. I really, other than like the occasional early, I've picked him up early game sometimes because it's like okay, this hero's kind of useful for now, and there was no other good options, and I know I'm gonna replace him later. Like I said, I don't replace heroes much, but this has got to be the most replaced one. His name is Gerald, apparently. Um, I feel like I just don't get the point of scaling him. You could run him as a semi tank, I guess, and I think I have tried that, but then like them, what do you do with him? Because he doesn't have a taunt again, and he has no built-in tankiness or healing. So I don't know, just kind of whack. Celeste here gives mana and surge power. The mana regen is potentially very useful. It's just because she doesn't do anything directly. Doesn't directly do any damage or any heal or any shield or anything, or even apply debuffs. Once again, I find her a little hard to use. It's like running a 4-man team till you can give her enough. I guess just I think she just needs mana regen really. Once you give her enough mana regen to be casting her spell like off cooldown, or not even off cooldown, but ideally more than off cooldown. I believe it stacks. But you also need to surge. Like it's based on surge level 2. You need a lot for her to do anything, and she does nothing until she's online. Like once she's online, she can be kind of nice. Like your heroes will just cast off cooldown. But yeah, I don't know. You need you need a lineup that wants to be casting nonstop, which some don't. Like there's some heroes that don't want to cast. And then you also need to get her all the right items for her to do anything. It's just very annoying. The last-ish one is the vampire guy. He's the exact same issue as the hero above. He has some tankiness in how he like heals himself, but he has no taunt, which really undermines his value as a tank. No taunt, no good. Um, he applies some bleeds, which is kind of nice, and I think this is a recent change. It actually increases the amount he leeches from enemies based on the bleed, and I think they maybe lowered his spell damage to accommodate for that. So maybe there's more potential with him now, but I just don't really get the point of him right now. He's just a really shitty tank. The bottom tier is the question mark tier, and I have the weird like owl tree looking guy. I have no idea what this hero is meant to be used for. He's a very unique set of active and default passive where he like does more damage based on his shield, but it's only up to double. It's not like infinitely scaling or anything. And then his default passive lets him like gain shield when he auto attacks, which is kind of interesting. So I guess you kind of need some auto attack on him, or at least you don't want to lower his attack speed. Then his attack also always hits the back enemy, and I don't know. I just don't know what you're meant to do with him. I don't think there's enough heroes that focus the back enemy for it to make sense. It's just like you would just end up splitting your damage in a pointless way. Um, and his scaling, like I said, like it's not like other heroes like Corinna with where it's, I think I'm saying that name right, where like you want to take like increase your HP to increase your shield and therefore increase your damage. Like his is just if he's at 100% shield, he does double damage, and that's it. So you don't really want to increase his HP. Well, I got it. I just don't. I don't get. I have no idea what you do with him. I assume he's a Zan, which is my least picked hero on that list. Because I tried him a couple times. I just don't know what you're meant to do with him. I don't know what he's meant to synergize with. He's just a damage dealer. He doesn't apply any debuffs. He doesn't do anything for your team. But as a damage dealer, he seems to have a pretty hard. He doesn't, not a hard cap on how much damage he does, but he doesn't seem to scale as well as other heroes. So I don't know. I do not understand the point of him at all. With all that said, let me rank these new 6 heroes real quick. And I'll look at the names for these ones. Shrop is our first hero. He is the big scary wolf man. I actually like this guy a ton. I think his character model is super cool. He's a very scary, like, rat wolf guy. All these heroes, I think, are way more synergetic than a lot of the original ones. He's kind of one of those. Let me switch the screen real quick. He's applying bleed over time. He has this whole max mana thing where he can cast just by critting twice, so you can just up his max mana without care. And then his default passive benefits from that. There's obviously items that you can use to then scale his damage with it. And he also that cast is basically just an auto attack, but one that does bonus damage based on the bleed. No, I just feel like he's a lot of fun. I enjoyed the couple games I played with him. He's a physical damage bleed hero, which is like always gonna be good. And on top of that, he's just, I feel like, some nice built-in synergy with the max mana thing. So he's a lot of fun. From the same update, these icons got moved around. But I'm actually gonna do, fuck, what's his name? Solaroth next, because these guys were the first 2 added in some kind of update. This guy actually got nerfed. That's how strong he was. I think I'm gonna put him in B for now. Hell, no, I'll put him in A. I think he fits exactly with like this hero right here, where he's one of these Eth damage dealers. But he also has like a multi-attack thing. Switch the screen again. He can attack up to 20 times instantly with his active, and keep in mind that's with max mana. So his base max mana, where he's casting all the time, is only going to be 3 attacks. But just like the Wolfman scale with max mana, kind of. It's weird. I feel like it's scaling with max mana, but it's not like the wolf, I guess, where you're purely benefiting. It just like the more max mana you have, the less you cast it, and just kind of evens out, I guess. So it shouldn't really matter how much max mana you have, really. But it just means if if you're on a strat where maybe like you have a relic that's giving everyone max mana, he just doesn't really care, which is handy. Or if you just want to do a lot of burst or have items that give benefits based on max mana, that's also a thing too, I guess. And then he can heal people, which is kind of nice. I used him once. He was kind of cool. He's just an F damage dealer / healer. He reminds me a lot. He's basically a right-click version of the Swamp Monster. Maybe that's why he's also a Swamp Monster. Chris. Such a funny name. I forgot how stupid his name was. He sounded like a right-click version of Chris, I guess. So that's kind of cool, but not overly interesting. He can go the same tier as Chris. I think is reasonable. Next we have the Halloween update, where we have the Scythe guy. I like him. He's a lot of fun. He's a lot like Zot's. Kind of like a melee version of Zot's, except his spell does a ton of damage if you can get his attack and spell power both up. And with him, they also added a bunch of items, relics, and I think an origin, which kind of work towards that spell and attack damage simultaneous increase, which is kind of fun. I really enjoyed the couple of games I played with him. He definitely feels like he could be a little hard to work around, but the payoff seemed really good. And I may have gotten lucky, honestly. Like, I got a couple items both runs that were just really good on him, but it does seem like there's at least like 4 or 5 that are really good. So, and probably more. Some of like even the original items are good, like the sunglasses, are like a classic. Those have been nerfed a couple times, I think, but those would definitely be good on him. So he's kind of cool. I liked him. I generally do like all these new heroes. The next one is maybe the one I've liked the least. Is the Pumpkin Man. Let's swap screens again. So he gains defense and HP whenever he stuns people. And then his spell's really weird. Basically, he's just constantly stunning. But and he stuns more as time goes on, but then that resets on cast. So he's another one of these heroes that's playing around wanting more max mana, I guess. But then he's got this weird thing where if you give him, I guess, bonus damage and spell power, he'll just gain max mana for himself. He's very weird. I'm not entirely sure what to do with him. I feel like because he's a tank, obviously, a tank with some utility. Um, but like he has that kind of low attack speed many tanks have. So I don't think you'd want to give him like the stun on attack items. You ideally just want to work around this quasi-active. But like none of the max mana base items give defense. They're all it's either attack speed, attack damage, or spell power. And then putting spell damage and attack power on a tank just for them to increase their max mana is weird. I don't know. He feels really weird to build around. I kind of like the concept, but I've struggled to use him so far. So we're just gonna put him in B. Um, and then lastly, we're on the Christmas update, which is the most recent one. Exactly, it was November 22nd, I think, so a month ago. I've tried using the snowman a couple times, and I'm actually going to put him in the question mark tier. What's his name? Frosty. I guess we'll go back to the. Did I even swap? Okay, hold up. Hold up. I forgot to swap screens. Yeah, so we put the Pumpkin Man in B, but I'm putting the Snowman in the question mark tier because his passive doesn't work, like, at all. I tested it a couple times. Well, not at all. That's actually the weird thing. Sorry. It it worked on other heroes. I had other heroes with this passive and it worked, but it didn't work on Snowy. Maybe it's purely a visual bug. I'm not going to nerd out enough to like do my own math on the DPS, but from what I can tell, it just doesn't work. And I don't think it's a visual bug because it not working seemed to match his lack of DPS compared to other heroes on the squad. So I think he could be very good. The amount of attack speed and crit he gets from his spell is insane. And as long as you have something that allows him to stun an on hit stun item, he has potential to do crazy damage. The one weird thing I found, or not weird thing, but annoying thing, is if you can't find one of those on like something that lets him stun, he's definitely like a pile of garbage. So he's super duper item specific, which is kind of annoying. Like I think just having shocks isn't enough. You need like maybe the relic that lets you stun, or is there? I'm pretty sure there's a passive version, or like I said, one of the items. Um, so I think he definitely wouldn't be S tier because he's finicky, but he is kind of cool when he gets going. And I don't know, the freaky snowman's kind of cool too. I kind of like the character model a bit. Um, but right now I'm really not sure because a massive portion of the hero just doesn't work. So question mark. Okay, last hero has a funny name, Naomi. Naomi the Christmas Witch, I guess. She's the one I've used. I want to say the least. I used her once. I think all the other heroes I've used twice. Just kind of the way it's gone. That being said, I think she's an easy S tier. Or S plus tier even. And we're gonna switch back to the game. Like I said, I feel like these newer heroes have a lot more built-in synergy than some of the older ones. Well, I guess I say that, and then Mr. Pumpkins is totally weird, but Snowy distinctly lacks the built-in synergy of being able to stun people. But whatever. For the most part, they feel more inherently synergetic, and I think this is a big one. Um, she cast a spell on the ally with the highest shield received, which is really useful because some of the other shield based ones are usually either on like the lowest HP ally or the ally that already has the most shield. I think having it with whoever has the most shield received makes it really easy to decide who's getting it. Um, which is important because on top of the shield, she also gives attack speed. So you can give your DPS dealer something like, for example, let me just show you the item actually while we're here. Um, like this item right here. Shield received. They'll now become the one that receives the shields, and they will get attack speed from her spell and attack damage from the item. Something like that is like a very obvious combo. Um, there's a couple others, I think. And then she's getting spell power just by having mana regen, which is always handy. She's really high base mana regen, also very high max mana, mind you, but you can just load up on mana regen. I don't think you need a ton of spell power, really. She feels like just a very, very straightforward and very powerful support. Everything Celeste should have been. Not really. They're pretty different, but yeah, I don't know. Just a very, very strong support from what it seems. Feels very easy to just pick up and make work in a lineup. But yeah, there you go. Those are my opinions. Wrong button. So yeah, here's I guess the final tier list for now. I think that's everything. I guess we did find one hero was missing originally, which is awkward. But I think they're all on this list. I think it's relatively accurate to my current opinions, but my opinions are a little wishy-washy right now because I forgot a lot of the stuff from when I last played, and a bunch of heroes have had, and items have been changed, as well as a lot of new items and relics being added to the game, which shakes stuff up. But hopefully, going to be playing a bit more. Maybe even release additional content after this. But for now, goodbye.